It's June 20, Ukraine Media Center confirms starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Chaporenko. It's been 16 months that the enemy is trying to eradicate us as the nation, to eradicate our culture, our identity, to rewrite the history, but regardless all of it, we only become stronger. And now we will talk about the situation in the culture front, specifically in the theater scene. So tomorrow there will be a premiere of Zaporozhian's Beyond Danube, the opera, and we've gathered today to discuss this premiere. So our guests today are Yuriy Melnyk, Deputy Chairman of the Board of MHP, Chairman of the Board at MHP-Gromadi Charitable Foundation, Vasyl Vovkun, Director General, Artistic Director of Lviv National Opera, Oksana Taranenko, Stage Director, co-author and new opera libretto, Roman costume producer. And the first question will be probably to Mr. Vasyl. Now there's a lot of different works of our cultural heritage that are being rethought, and this premiere will be a part of this process. Why did you think there was a need for a new view of this opera? What was your contribution? What was new to this opera? Well, the Ukrainian opera should be recreated from social realism in some other way, but Lviv Opera works under Ukrainian project program, and one of the pillars of this program says that the Ukrainian classics should be actualized. But I would rather say that we pay more attention to the new works, because in our portfolio we have List Mykita the Fox, we will have another Belly, the Shadows of the Forgotten Ancestors, Solaris by Rodin, and now the work is underway on the opera Mazepa. So we put more accent on the modern opera, because we understand that classic and Russian opera were not working together good enough. But we have some specimens that we're trying to reformat, because actualizing from the experience of the Polish opera, for example, sometimes in the classics the gypsies, they switch to the motorcycles, for example. We don't do that on purpose, because there is no need for such actualization. There is a new opera for that. The new experiments and the projects that we plan today, we invite there the people who are conceptually and fundamentally and creatively can be our colleagues. They can become a part of our team, and this is how we invited Oksana Taranenko, because we were thinking that probably now it's not very actual to make such things as Bogdan Khmelnytsky by Donkevich, but that there is a Ukrainian Polish topic being traced there, not such so to say the brightest page of the Ukrainian history, that in a view of the fact that Poland helps us so much during the war, and that was Zaporozhian Beyond the Danube, and the theater stopped at this opera, and Oksana Taranenko with the team were able to recreate, in my opinion, this to recreate the Sharavari myth into today's heroic image, and strike out everything that was happening before that, in understanding not only of the instance of Zaporozhian Beyond Danube, but even in view of the fact that we should treat responsibly our small cultural heritage, do not repeating the mistakes. Do not repeat the mistakes that we were imposed by a different ideology, where we look smaller, where we look secondary, deprived of intellect, and I think that the latest premiere in Lviv will prove that, and this is why it creates some interest, and we're happy to have this opportunity to show this opera as a premiere in Kyiv tomorrow. Maybe it will become a fashion soon that all the premieres thanks to Roman will be happening first in Lviv and then in Kyiv. Obviously, if Mr. Yuriy will be joining this team as well. Thank you, Mr. Oksana. Mr. Vasyl just mentioned that this opera is deprived of stereotypes. The image of Cossack, of Ukrainian, is being recreated there. So what does the Cossack look like in this new opera? Well, the first thing we started with, when we just started this work, we asked ourselves how we are about to present the Zaporozhian beyond Danube to a modern spectator, and Mr. Vasyl offered me to start with the protagonist. So who is the protagonist? And we've come to a conclusion that it should be an educated person, a capable person. So we decided to give Ivan Karas, the protagonist, the features that we would like to see in all of the Ukrainians now. Not something semi-drunk who is capable of only some regular things. So this is what we start our work with. I was inspired by different famous movies and other sources, and first of all by the understanding that what was created in Ukraine within the last 300 years was created in the imperial context, and we cannot afford continuing watching ourselves in the same way. So this is why we change the view, the angle. We look at the hero, and we change the structure, and we recreated, like Mr. Vasyl says, the whole thing, the whole work. Mr. Yuriy, so you support this project regardless of the things that some might say that culture is not so actual for the time being. Why do you continue providing support, and why did you pick this specific opera? It's my pleasure to represent MHP here and to represent the charitable fund MHP-Gromadi, because in such an artistic environment it's not always that the agrarians end up in such an environment, but the fact that we got engaged in the recreation of such work, and I think that tomorrow's premiere in Kyiv will show that our choice as a sponsors was a right choice. And I think that we can spread this experience to the others, share this experience as the producers and as the supporters. The MHP-Gromadi works for 8 years, and the culture was always in the scope of view of the businesses, and it did not stop with the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Within this period we've done even more than we did within the last years, because apart from this project that we support, apart from tomorrow's premiere, it's been 2 years that we have another project, Cinema for the Sake of Victory. We work with the Association of Cinematic Artists here, and within the last year, or with the year 2022, there were more than 1,000 demonstrations of Ukrainian movies with Ukrainian actors, Ukrainian ambassadors. We've also established a good project with Cossack System, a band. We've done about 15 performances with them, and the story is continuing this year. And for us, supporting the culture is not less important than supporting the defense, and the priority from the point of view of the business that is supported by the company is the defense. And we are traditional partners in sport, medicine and culture areas, that if we underperform in some areas, it doesn't happen because we neglect something, but it's because defense is in the first place. We help our defenders. I'm not boasting, a lot of people may confirm my words, but the meaning of culture, the meaning of the projects that we've done in year 2022, Mr. Minister is absent here, but recently we were opening a new group of sculptures at the entrance to the Museum of Ethnography, and to me it was a big contribution to the support of Ukrainian identity, national identity. And it was our conscious choice, our intentional choice, and I can tell Mr. Vasyl today that those directions that we had to support in the opera art, we are ready to get engaged in all those projects too. Thank you. Thank you very much. The question will be to Miss Lyudmila. Let's get back to the form of this opera. I think that this recreation, this rethinking goes with the red thread through this opera, and it can be told also about the costumes. What did you pay the most attention to? What was the most important in developing of the new costumes for the opera? Yes, the most complicated was that now a lot of attention is being drawn to that sometimes you get this tag of Sharavari art, and the sense of this word is not always properly understood. Obviously the costumes were thought. On one hand, we wanted to make them the most historic possible, and on the other hand, they should be in accord with the modern image, and I think we kind of made it. I've always wanted to make them more modernized. The director wanted them even more modernized, but the suits, the costumes, they have to fall into scenographic environment, and the costumes, they are supposed to create an integral image with the scenography and with the director's solutions. This is how the play goes, and I think we've made it. We added some modern components, but in the structure of the costume, however, they're still based on the traditional hem, on the traditional structure, and I think that we've made a lot in this area because we've made a lot of efforts. The Zaporozhian is a project which was extended in time due to a number of reasons, but it has still happened, and I think it was successful. So we invite everybody tomorrow to attend this premiere in Kyiv. Mr. Vasyl, Mr. Oksana, I don't know who may respond this issue, but what will the spectator be impressed with? Sound, images, some unexpected solutions. What will the spectators pay attention to for sure? Spoiler. Well, first of all, it's the picture. And by this play, we were trying to break this Sharavari trend, something non-intellectual, something souvenir, obvious type. We were trying to philosophically generalize the image, and Professor Yuriy was present at the premiere. The premiere was being born very difficultly. Everything was sparkling. We were looking for balance, which will tell the modern spectator the story we want, but this balance between the modern culture, classic, something philosophical, something celestial, something comic, something lyrical, heroic, with some cinematic tricks. Yuriy called it a gallery of Baroque portraits, which was very valuable to me to hear. And the second is the music that was rearranged in a modern way, orchestrated in a modern way. We were walking towards the cinematic soundtracks, towards the modern 21st century music. We had the go through scenes. We wanted it to happen in that way. We just capture a spectator, they come around, and the play is over. I think that all the means that we were using, if I may just say a couple of words off top, I want to emphasize something. All the team of Lviv Opera and us as the directors, we were invited, and we were understanding that we can do our favorite thing, because the armed forces defend our country, and we think about it all the time. And I want to introduce Taras Berezhansky, who plays the role of Ivan Karas. Now he is the embodiment and a good example that he is in territorial defense forces. He defends the skies above Kyiv against Shaheds. And today he sings in the opera, and in the night he works on the roofs of Kyiv. This is a representation of integrated phenomena. This is our protagonist and a hero in one person, and we appreciate his input a lot. Thank you, thanks a lot. Mr. Roman, do you have any touring plans? Do you plan to bring this play abroad? We know that Movka, a Ukrainian cartoon, has become very popular abroad, and now there is a growing interest to Ukrainian culture abroad. So what are your plans? So before talking about plans for the future, we want to survive tomorrow's event, because talking about tomorrow, it's very unique, it's a historic event, and it's very difficult, because it's not every day that during the active phase of the war, during the full-scale invasion, there is a premiere of new operas. And when we've heard this idea from Miss Oksana, the way she makes this opera, we knew that it was developed for some time, and when she said there will be some interesting things, we got interested too, and we said, yeah, let's make it in Kyiv, because it's not everybody that can go to Lviv, but in Kyiv it will be talked about. People should be knowing about it, because the capital scene is a big platform. Why did we decide to do it? Because studying Zaporozhian between Danube, we were accepting the Zaporozhian as a Cossack who likes to get drunk and doesn't treat his wife quite well. But when we came to the premiere in Lviv, we realized that it's a completely new story, where there is no place for some humiliations, if we can say so. There is no this image of the drunkard. It's a heroic protagonist, heroic character, and we understand that it should be seen by whole Ukraine, it should be seen by the world. And getting engaged in this project, we were realizing that it's not commercial, but this event is our statement as Ukraine, our statement to the world that in Ukraine, during the Russian full-scale invasion, there still will be, and there may be, Ukrainian music sounding, Ukrainian opera playing, and tomorrow we will demonstrate it. Another important moment is that the scene of International Center for Culture and Arts, it has big technical capabilities, but the orchestra pit was opened during Soviet times, so today we already mount the scene, and the orchestra will be sitting in the orchestra pit tomorrow, and we will be able to hear the full-fledged opera tomorrow. And it's an achievement that It's the first time that we can do projects like this for the first time during independence, let alone during the full-scale invasion. So let's survive tomorrow's event in Kyiv, and then Europe wait for us. So yeah, we were in the platforms of the Opera of Europe, and we were talking about Czech Prague opera, and they were asking us to bring 3 operas or 2 operas in one ballet to Prague from Ukraine in 2024. So now we have this pool, the Fern Blossom, Mikita the Fox. In Czech, they were even showing it in Intercity, translated into Czech, and the third will be Zaporozhian Beyond Danube, and it can absolutely be demonstrated to a foreign spectator because they really want to feel something from us, to feel our mentality, our musical art, and obviously it is created not as a standalone opera. It can be as a part of some opera festivals, but it's the material that we may be offering for Prague, for example. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Do we have any questions on the floor?
Music Review, Тетяна Поліщук. Я би хотіла запитати...
Tatiana Polishuk, Music Review. I would like to ask Miss Oksana, why have you decided to put your characters into the arc? Where did you get this idea about the arc? And the second question is to the organizers. The Zhovtneva Palace, the modern center for arts and culture, is not a great platform for the premiere. The acoustic is not just as good as desired there. Did you think about any other venues? The first thing that we started thinking about was where those Cossacks want to come back. What will be the Ukraine they want to come back, and this work is the work of the artists for years to come. Maybe we'll use this image of Ukraine of the future where we all want to get to. We cannot say that it's clearly articulated. I think it's my personal opinion, but the team that represents this project may confirm it. Ukraine needs a powerful cultural expansion, and both internal and external. This is why we have to build this Ukraine of the future. And since this image does not exist so far, we're building it with our blood. And we decided with Mr. Tadei and Miss Lyudmila and Mr. Vasyl to give Ukrainians a chance to get in this arc, into this ship, and to have the sails filled with the wind, and the Ukraine they choose for themselves. We all have to answer this question: what will be this Ukraine like? Well, as to the venue, unfortunately now we are forced to work under serious restrictions, and currently the scene of the Zhovtneva Palace is the only one that may fit a necessary number of spectators and put them all into shelter in case of air raid alert. So this is one of the most important conditions we had to rely upon choosing the scene. And as to the acoustics, tomorrow Feria will cover our sound needs. We trust them, we worked with them, so I think it will both look and sound good. We don't know yet. Today we will have a rehearsal. Dear colleagues, we have Oleksandr Tkachenko joining us, the Minister of Culture and Information Policy, and the question will be right away to you, Mr. Oleksandr. Now we're rethinking different aspects of our culture. We understand the reasons why Russian aggression, Russia, it redistributed different priorities and opinions. We realize ourselves more and more as the nation. Why is it important to rethink the classical cultural works, and specifically this opera Zaporozhian Beyond Danube? I apologize for being late. it's important to have our art collectives travel to the front, travel abroad, and the number of travels they made within the war, Mr. Vasyl, correct me if I'm wrong, comparing to the pre-war time, this activity is incredibly intense. And rethinking of such classics as Zaporozhian Beyond Danube, the transition from classical post-Soviet perception to the modern perception of the classics is extremely actual, and I'm convinced many of you will want to visit tomorrow's premiere and to get convinced to what extent it is impossible for the Ukrainian works to give them the new sound, to stage new Ukrainian composers. The premieres of whose works were happening during the war. Dear colleagues, do we have any more questions? Well, if we don't have any, well, we have a small remark from Mr. Yuriy. I've forgotten to say one thing, and as head of the supervisory board of the charitable fund, we have Ada Rogovtseva on our board, and she responded to our request to become member of the supervisor, member of the board, and she directs us in the art projects, in the cultural projects, where she tells us where we should focus our efforts, what areas to support more, which to support less. But generally, the fact that culture has been supported during the war is the merit of Miss Ada. And on behalf of the team of MHP, I would like to thank Mrs. Ada that she is with us, and she takes maximum effort that all the steps we take are correct. Thank you. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. So we wish you a successful premiere. And by the way, is it sold out, or we can still buy some tickets? Well, you can still pick a ticket online, but I hope they are about to be sold out today. So we urge everybody to buy the tickets. We wish you a successful premiere. We urge all the Ukrainians to consume Ukrainian art. Glory to Ukraine and support Ukraine. And we will be back at 12 o'clock. We will talk about the situation with the Ukrainian refugees in the world. Joining us will be Karolina Lindholm-Billing, UNHCR representative in Ukraine. Thank you for staying with us.